The Passion of our Lord Jesus Christ, according to Matthew.
Jesus went with the disciples to a place called Gethsemane, and he said to them,
"Sit here while I go over there and pray."
He took with him Peter and the 2 sons of Zebedee, and began to be sorrowful and agitated. Then he said to them,
"I am full of sorrow even to death. Remain here and stay awake with me."
And going a little farther, he threw himself on the ground and prayed,
"My Father, if it is possible, let this cup pass from me. Yet not what I want, but what you want."
Then he came to the disciples and found them sleeping. And he said to Peter,
"So could you not stay awake with me 1 hour? Stay awake and pray so that you will not fall into temptation. The spirit is willing, but the flesh is weak."
He went away for the 2nd time and prayed,
"My Father, if this cup cannot pass unless I drink it, your will be done."
Again he came and found them sleeping, for their eyes were heavy. So leaving them again, he went away and prayed for the 3rd time, saying the same words. Then he came to the disciples and said to them,
"Are you still sleeping and taking your rest? See, the hour is at hand, and the Son of Man is betrayed into the hands of sinners. Get up, let us be going. See, my betrayer is at hand."
While he was still speaking, Judas, one of the 12, arrived. With him was a large crowd with swords and clubs from the chief priests and the elders of the people. Now Judas, the betrayer, had given them a sign, saying,
"The one I will kiss is the man. Arrest him."
At once he came up to Jesus, kissed him, and said,
"Greetings, Rabbi."
"Friend, do what you are here to do."
Then they came and laid hands on Jesus and arrested him. Suddenly one of those with Jesus put his hand on his sword, drew it, and struck the slave of the high priest, cutting off his ear.
"Put your sword back into its place, for all who take the sword die by the sword. Do you think that I cannot appeal to my Father, and he will at once send me more than 12 legions of angels? But how then would the Scriptures be fulfilled which say it must happen in this way? Have you come out with swords and clubs to arrest me as though I were a bandit? Day after day I sat in the temple teaching, and you did not arrest me. But all this has taken place so that the Scriptures of the prophets may be fulfilled."
Then all the disciples deserted him and fled.
Those who had arrested Jesus took him to Caiaphas the high priest, in whose house the scribes and the elders had gathered. But Peter was following him at a distance, as far as the courtyard of the high priest. And going inside, he sat with the guards in order to see how this would end. Now the chief priests and the whole council were looking for false testimony against Jesus, so that they might put him to death. But they found none, though many false witnesses came forward. At last 2 came forward and said,
"This fellow said, I am able to destroy the temple of God and to build it in 3 days."
The high priest stood up and said,
"Have you no answer? What is this testimony that these men are bringing against you?"
But Jesus was silent.
"I put you under oath before the living God. Tell us if you are the Messiah, the Son of God."
"You have said so. But I tell you, from now on you will see the Son of Man seated at the right hand of the Mighty One and coming on the clouds of heaven."
Then the high priest tore his clothes and said,
"He has blasphemed. Why do we still need witnesses? You have now heard his blasphemy. What is your verdict?"
"He deserves death."
Then they spat in his face and struck him with their fists. Others slapped him, saying,
"Prophesy to us, you Messiah. Who is it that struck you?"
Now Peter was sitting outside in the courtyard. A servant girl came to him and said,
"You were with Jesus the Galilean."
But he denied it before all of them, saying,
I do not know what you are talking about.
When he went out to the porch, another servant girl saw him, and she said to the bystanders,
This man was with Jesus of Nazareth.
Again he denied it with an oath.
I do not know the man.
After a little while the bystanders came up and said to Peter,
Certainly you are one of them, for your accent betrays you.
Then he began to curse, and he swore an oath.
I do not know the man.
At that moment the cock crowed. Then Peter remembered what Jesus had said.
Before the cock crows, you will deny me 3 times.
And Peter went out and wept bitterly.
Early in the morning, all the chief priests and elders made their plans against Jesus to put him to death. They put him in chains, led him off, and handed him over to Pilate, the Roman governor. Jesus stood before the governor, and the governor asked him,
Are you the king of the Jews?
You say so.
When he was accused by the chief priests and elders, he did not answer.
Do you not hear how many accusations they make against you?
But Jesus gave him no answer, not even to a single charge, so that the governor was greatly amazed. Now, at the festival, the governor was accustomed to release a prisoner for the crowd, anyone whom they wanted. At that time, they had a notorious prisoner called Jesus Barabbas. So after they had gathered, Pilate said to them,
Whom do you want me to release for you? Jesus Barabbas, or Jesus who is called the Messiah?
For the governor realized that it was out of jealousy that the Jewish authorities had handed him over. While he was sitting on the judgment seat, his wife sent word to him.
Have nothing to do with that innocent man, for today I have suffered a great deal because of a dream about him.
Now the chief priests and the elders persuaded the crowds to ask for Barabbas and to have Jesus killed. Then Pilate again asked them,
Which of the two do you want me to release for you?
Barabbas!
Then what should I do with Jesus who is called the Messiah?
Crucify him!
Why? What evil has he done?
but they shouted all the more,
Crucify him! Crucify him!
Pilate saw that he could do nothing, but rather that a riot was beginning. He took some water and washed his hands before the crowd.
I am innocent of this man's blood. See to it yourselves.
Then the people as a whole answered,
His blood be on us and on our children.
Then Pilate released Barabbas for them. And after flogging Jesus, he handed him over to be crucified.
Pilate's soldiers took Jesus into the governor's headquarters, and they gathered the whole cohort around him. They stripped him and put a scarlet robe on him, and after twisting some thorns into a crown, they put it on his head. They put a reed in his right hand and knelt before him and mocked him, saying,
"Hail, King of the Jews!"
They spat on him and took the reed and struck him on the head. After mocking him, they stripped him of the robe and put his own clothes on him. Then they led him away to crucify him. As they went out, they came upon a man from Cyrene named Simon. They compelled this man to carry his cross. And when they came to a place called Golgotha, which means place of a skull, they offered him wine to drink, mixed with gall. But when he tasted it, he would not drink it. They crucified him. Then they divided his clothes among themselves by casting lots, and they sat down there and kept watch over him. Over his head they put the charge against him, which read,
"This is Jesus, the King of the Jews."
2 bandits were crucified with him, one on his right and one on his left. People who passed by mocked him, shook their heads, and shouted,
"You said you were going to destroy the temple and build it in 3 days. Save yourself.
If you are the Son of God, come down from the cross."
In the same way, the chief priests, along with the scribes and elders, mocked him.
He saved others. He cannot save himself.
He said he was the King of Israel.
Let him come down from the cross now, and we will all believe in him.
He puts his trust in God. Let God deliver him now, if he wants to.
He said he was God's son.
The bandits who were crucified with him were also taunting him in the same way. From noon, darkness came over the whole land until 3 in the afternoon. At about 3 o'clock, Jesus cried with a loud voice,
Eli, Eli, lema sabachthani.
that is, my God, why have you forsaken me? When some of the bystanders heard it, they said,
"This man is calling for Elijah."
One of them ran and got a sponge, filled it with cheap wine, put it on a stick, and gave it to him to drink. But the others said,
Wait, let us see whether Elijah will come to save him.
Then Jesus cried again with a loud voice and breathed his last.
At that moment, the curtain of the temple was torn in 2 from top to bottom. The earth shook and the rocks were split apart. The tombs also were opened, and many of God's people who had died were raised to life. After Jesus was raised, they came out of their tombs and entered the holy city, and many people saw them. When the centurion and those with him who were keeping watch over Jesus saw the earthquake and what took place, they were terrified and said,
"Truly, this man was God's son."
Many women were also there, looking on from a distance. They had followed Jesus from Galilee and had provided for him. Among them were Mary Magdalene, and Mary, the mother of James and Joseph, and the mother of the sons of Zebedee. When it was evening, there came a rich man from Arimathea named Joseph, who was also a disciple of Jesus. He went to Pilate and asked for the body of Jesus. Then Pilate ordered it to be given to him. So Joseph took the body and wrapped it in a clean linen cloth and laid it in his own new tomb, which he had hewn in the rock. He then rolled a great stone to the door of the tomb and went away. Mary Magdalene and the other Mary were there, sitting opposite the tomb. This is the Passion of the Lord.